At Trevecca, students have many ways to find their place within the campus community. In fact, community is one of the major themes of life at Trevecca. Trevecca students can choose clubs or organizations that interest them and help them discover their place in a community. Opportunities are available with the Mission Club, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, College Democrats or College Republicans, clubs for specific academic majors, service clubs, and the student-produced newspaper and yearbook. Participation in campus clubs helps students find others who share interests while helping them learn leadership skills which they can use in their future careers. For more information on Trevecca Nazarene University or any of its programs, visit trevecca.edu.
In Dr. Dunning's discussion of sanctification and the image of God, he has pointed out the debate as to the precise meaning of the image of God in the Bible. Certainly, throughout the history of Christianity, various suggestions have been given as to the specific meanings of this concept. However, he has noted that ultimately in the Bible, to be created in God's image, a fourfold relationship is understood. He points out that the image is directly related to the human relationship to God, the relationship to other persons, the relationship to possessions, and the submission of oneself to the Creator God. The key to the understanding of the image of God in the Bible is certainly the idea of relationality. Let's go back for a few moments to the first mention of the image of God in the Bible, Genesis 1. Throughout Genesis chapter 1, expressions of God's sovereignty over His creation are described. The Lord is indeed understood to be king over His creation. As we often see expressed in the depictions of creation in the book of Psalms, the Lord is king. As He brings light into darkness and as He orders the chaotic waters, He is king. However, as king or sovereign over His creation, He refuses to play the part of a micromanager. He entrusts His life-giving work and even His life-giving creative power to His creation. He calls for the earth to produce grass and herbs and trees. He calls for the waters to teem with fish. He entrusts the daytime to the rule of the sun and the nighttime to the rule of the moon. He remains sovereign. He is indeed king, and He is king alone. But He is not a king who desires to rule alone. He entrusts His plan, His mission to His creation. On the sixth day of creation, we see the ultimate expression of God's desire to entrust rule as He creates human beings. In the ancient Near East, kings who had conquered lands shaped statues or images of themselves, and they placed them in their conquered territory. The task of this image of a king was to point away from itself to the king who had actually conquered the territory. Now, God, as the conquering king, creates an image of Himself, humanity. This image is to join the mission of God, the divine purposes of the Lord Himself, as it points away from itself to the one who has spoken light into the darkness, as it brings glory not to itself, but to the one who has brought order into brokenness, hope into hopelessness, life into death. Old Testament theologian Bernard Anderson has stated that humanity was created as the living representation of God's kingly rule on earth, just as the image of a king set up in various provinces of an empire was a visible token of the king's dominion. However, human beings were not created to be lifeless statues. God entrusts them with dominion to rule over creation. They become stewards of what God has shaped. They are given by God the responsibility to continue to work alongside God in what He is doing. They join Him in His mission. As Dr. Dunning has so clearly stated in this chapter, They do this. They partner with God by living in relationships. Particularly, as we see in Genesis chapter 2, humans live out their divinely given task by being in relationship with the God whom they image or represent. Collectively, human beings carry out this task of imaging God to the world so that they also live in relationship with one another. Living together with the human community in order to reflect the nature of God and to join Him in His mission on earth, they also live in relationship with His creation. They are made from dust. They even name the animals. However, as Genesis 3 so vividly describes, as humans usurp divine power, no longer satisfied to be the image of God, pointing away from themselves, but desiring now to be gods themselves, life givers and life sustainers, all relationships become broken and fragmented. Relationship with God, relationship with our fellow human being, and relationship with God's creation, all are broken. The dilemma of humanity, created as the image of God, but no longer properly reflecting God, is stated so clearly in Ezekiel chapter 36. Ezekiel declares that the people have misrepresented God to the world. In other words, they have not lived out their role as the image of God. They have been called to say something about God's character to the world, but yet they have not fulfilled that call. They have profaned His name, according to Ezekiel. So what is the answer? Ezekiel would say this: I had concern for my holy name, which my people profaned among the nations. Therefore, it is not for your sake, O Israel, that I am about to act, but it's for the sake of my holy name, my reputation, that you have profaned among the nations. So I will sanctify my name, which has been profaned, and the nations will know that I am the Lord, when through you I display my holiness before their eyes. In other words, the Lord will sanctify Himself, set Himself apart in the eyes of the nations, make His nature known to the nations by sanctifying His people. So what does that sanctification look like? Ezekiel continues in verse 25. I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and you will be clean from all your uncleannesses. I will cleanse you from all of your idols. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will remove from your body the heart of stone, and I will give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you, and I will cause you to follow my statutes and be careful to observe my ordinances. Then you shall be my people, and I will be your God. Indeed, as Dr. Dunning so beautifully states in this chapter, the law, the Sermon on the Mount, the language of the New Testament epistles in which holiness is described as Christ-likeness, all of these are ultimately the expressions of the image of God fleshed out in the world by God's people. But how is it that the law, the Sermon on the Mount, Christ-likeness ever take place? Only as the Lord, by His grace, sanctifies His great name by sanctifying His people. And the God who has created us in His image is faithful, and He Himself will do it.